Welcome everybody to this week's edition of CMM Live. My name is Joe Campolo and I proudly serve as a managing partner of Campolo, Middleton, and McCormick here on Long Island. It's Thursday, December 14th. It's a snowy morning here on Long Island. And as you know, our show, we attempt to bring the movers, the shakers, the leaders on Long Island who are directly involved in economic development and helping move Long Island forward from a business perspective. And our guest today, we would be remiss if we did not have Dr. Yacov Shamash on our show. Yacov, I'm so happy to have you here today. So just for a full disclaimer, it's our 20th anniversary. We've known each other for 20 years. Yep. I was a lot younger and a lot lighter back then when we met. You look the same though. You look terrific.
I've gotten grayer.
And Yacov and I met because I'm a Stony Brook grad and I got involved in the Alumni Association. And I realized 20 years ago that as Stony Brook goes, so goes Long Island at this point, right? And you've been at the helm as Vice President of Economic Development. You've done a fantastic job, doing that. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's talk about the last 20 years. What have you seen? What have you done? Where has Stony Brook gone over the last 20 years, and how has that helped, carry Long Island? We'll break that down, but that's sort of the conversation I want to have with you this morning.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you for inviting me. Very much appreciated. And it has been 20 years. Not too long.
It's unbelievable, right?
Passed by, you bet, absolutely. Stony Brook has done incredibly well over the past 20 years. We have, as a university, we have grown significantly in terms of numbers of students. We've increased, I think, something like, we were at about 19,000 students. We're now at about 26,000 students, undergraduate and graduate students. We're doing incredible research over there, and certainly the College of Engineering has grown significantly. The School of Medicine is doing great. So things have gone very well at Stony Brook. Of course, budgets, we always have problems with budgets, right. and this is a particularly awkward time at this time, but we've managed and we do very well. Long Island is, there's been incredible changes over the past 20 years. The defense industry essentially has shrunk quite a bit, significantly. When I came, about 25 years ago, I came to Long Island and we had Northrop Grumman at the time, now it's Northrop Grumman, but Grumman had about 22,000 employees on Long Island. Now they have about 400, 500 employees. So there's been a big reduction in the number of employees in the defense industry, but we've had other industries that have picked up. So software has been one of those. We've had significant inroads in biotech and medical biotechnology, and more recently also in the energy sector. So.
Right, and the thing that has impressed me tremendously, both with Stony Brook and the job that you and your office have been able to do, is, those industries have really grown because of the partnership and the leadership that's come out of Stony Brook. So, the state of higher education is a topic for another day. Sure. The state of economic, development has been fantastically fostered here on Long Island, because we do have brilliant business people and entrepreneurs. We just have to change with the time. So, one of the changes that I was excited to be a part of is CWIT, right? And I can remember the ribbon cutting ceremony like it was yesterday when it was there, and the governor came down, and I was so impressed that you were able to get Stony Brook designated as one of the centers of excellence. So talk a little bit about that sure. process. Talk about sure. how that happened, and talk about what CWIT's up to today and the success that's been attributed to that.
Well, at the time when the governor, this was under Governor Patchogue, when he proposed the establishments of the centers of excellence, it was proposed that we have 4 centers of excellence, none of which were on Long Island. And so working at the time with the leadership of a number of companies on Long Island, and in particular CA, technologies and at the time Symbol Technologies. We essentially worked very hard to get a center of excellence designated here on the island, and so we came up with the idea of a center of excellence for wireless and information technology, because those are areas that we felt were very important for Long Island. We already had some existing strength, business strength here. And so we did get that designation. They increased it from 4 centers to 5, and that center was established. The center was established. A few years later, we built the facility essentially to house that center, which is the building, the facility that you've been in a number of times, and it's done remarkably well. When we established that center, the requirement was that we had to match industry money, federal grants, by a factor of 3 to 1. So for every $1 we get from the state, we had to show a matching of $3. And we've more than surpassed that. Now we're, I think it's more like 300, 400 million. We got $50 million from the state. So we already have more than met the requirement that the state had put on us. And the focus of that center, those centers of excellence, was to try and make New York State at the cutting edge of technology in certain areas. So we had the wireless and IT. Upstate, they had the infotonics at Rochester. Buffalo, I believe, had something in the area of bioinformatics. The Nano Center in Albany, and then Syracuse had a center, University of Syracuse. Now there are 10 of those centers. But the purpose of those centers were we were going to be the best in the country in a particular area. And so we did the wireless and IT center, and more recently we added another center of excellence in the area of advanced energy systems. So we have 2, and the state has 10 of those. So we have 2 out of the 10 centers of excellence in the state.
Yeah, and it's really, to me, that was really a watershed moment. It was critical getting that initial center of excellence here in terms of Seaward. And I can remember it because the entire dialogue about Stony Brook and the Long Island region changed with that implementation, And then it fostered, another great innovation that's come from you and your office are the high-tech incubators, right? So let's talk about that, because I proudly serve on the board of the Long Island High-Tech Incubator at Stony Brook. It houses incredible startup companies. And so talk about that. Talk about how that whole program started and the success it's had.
Yeah. So that incubator was established around 1992, in effect. Although before the facility came online, some of the companies were housed in the basements of some of the buildings, the research buildings on the campus. At any one time, in our incubators at Stony Brook, we have about 70 companies. The Long Island High-Tech Incubator is by far the largest incubator. We also have a second incubator located in Calverton, which is focused more on agriculture, aquaculture, and environmental technologies. And then in the 2 centers of excellence that were built, each one has about 10% of the space is devoted to incubators. So total, we have about 70 incubators. LIHTI is the godfather of the incubators at Stony Brook, and it was originally focused primarily on biotech, medical biotechnology. We took a loan out, and we essentially got some support, a lot of support from the state to build that incubator. And it's been essentially at full occupancy ever since we established it. So it's 100% occupancy. As soon as one company leaves, we have a couple of companies that want to come in. So we have a big, nice pipeline. And some of the companies have done extremely well while there. So.
Right. So what's the model of the incubator is collaboration, shared resources. What's the model there?
So the model for the incubators is that companies are admitted into the incubator, assuming by evaluating what the company's technology is, first of all, what they're trying to propose to do. We have a selection committee that does that. We also have the same selection committee that also looks at, well, by being in the incubator, how will you be interacting with the university? Are you going to be hiring students? Are you going to be using some of the unique facilities that we have on campus? Because startup companies can't afford big pieces of equipment that we may already have on the on the campus, so they could utilize that equipment. And so there needs to be synergies between what the company does and what the company is looking at doing and what the university has in terms of programs, in terms of research, interaction with faculty, R&D, and so on. So it's been very helpful to us to have that incubator there because it enhances the quality of the research that we do in those areas also. And when we do seek funding from the federal government, it's always good to be able to walk in with one or two companies saying, hey, we already have worked with the university, we are working with the university, this research is really critical for us, and if there is any kind of technology that intellectual property that may come out of this, then we would be able to work with the university to commercialize it.
Right, and it's such a great resource. You know, one of the things that we have as an asset that we don't talk about a lot is the entrepreneurial talents here on on Long Island. It's an asset. You know, the entrepreneurs are a rare breed. They're a rare breed, and you got. I mean, part of the success that Silicon Valley and Stanford have had is the marriage of the university with the valley.
Sure.
Right, and that's one of the things I'll tell you. I talk to a lot of business folks here on Long Island, and sort of a grave frustration is retaining and keeping talent here on Long Island. And Stony Brook comes up in a lot of those conversations because, like you said, there's, what did you say, it's 26,000 students there at any given time.
That's
and so part of the trick, and I think you guys have done a tremendous job with this through programs like the SPUR program, which we'll talk about and stuff like that. Part of it is incentivizing these students to work for Long Island companies, right? It's a huge challenge. So talk about, because I hear the business guys and they're always squawking, we need more talent, but talk about the initiatives and kind of you and I first started working together under the SPUR program. It's a wonderful program. So just talk about the different things the university is doing to help foster that talent to stay on Long Island.
Sure. We again, in terms of the talent, in terms of the in my other role at the university, which I had until about 2 years ago when I was also Dean of Engineering.
Dean of the School of Engineering.
We actually managed to grow the engineering enrollments by about a factor of 4. So we have now about, I think it's close to 5,000 students in the engineering programs. The engineering school is doing great, and the number of graduates has multiplied. So we graduate more than 1,000 students in the engineering and those STEM fields that everybody talks about.
Yep.
Of course, students hope to stay on Long Island. Some of them want to leave the island, and that's fine. But the opportunities are incredible for them here on the island. We have a great internship program where we place students. We have a wonderful career center that places students at companies on Long Island. So it's worked extremely well. Some of the programs that we have, we talked a little bit about the centers of excellence, because centers of excellence is university, industry working together, okay, and essentially with the federal government, whether federal government or state government working on projects and research and development activities. We also have centers for advanced technology, which the state has. The state has 15 such centers of excellence, centers for advanced technology. We have 3 of those. 3 of the 15. We're the only university in the state that has those. And one is in the area of medical biotechnology, one is in the area of energy systems, and one of them is in the area of sensors and electronics. All essentially having students working with companies to try and help the companies with their R&D activities and developing new technology. We have the SPUR program, which we referred to, and that has been in place for about 20 years, more than 20 years now. The focus of that was to try and help small companies on Long Island to transition from working in the defense industry at the time. This is 25 years, when the defense industry was really going down a very steep slope, to essentially help them to refocus and maybe go into commercial products or miniaturize it and help them better compete. In any one year on that program, we work with about 80 companies on something like 150 different projects. And the angle on that is that we have R&D facilities at the university in the engineering school that are utilized for R&D, but they could also be utilized to try and help those small companies that don't have R&D facilities.
Exactly.
And with the number of students that we have, number of graduate students, number of senior undergraduate students, number of faculty, we felt that that program, we can be the R&D arm for those small companies. And that has worked extremely well over the past 20 years.
Yeah, and that's great. It's like the RPA being like a planning association for municipalities and other
Yes.
entities that don't have planning. You get the R&D arm that way. It's a fantastic,
right.
fantastic idea, and it's a great way to do it. I will share with you. I know you're aware of this, but I want our viewers to be aware of it. You know, we over the past year, I'm on the board of the HIALI, the Hauppauge Industrial Association, and we stole a page out of Stony Brook's playbook, and we did our own economic impact study. But we used Stony Brook students to do it. So we got 3 MBA interns, and we've had them for the past year and a half, 3 each different semester, to do our study, our economic impact study, to do a survey and recommendations as to enhance the park, and to do a study showing how we can better strengthen the industrial park's relationship with the university. And we're reaping the benefits of that because the HIA was just awarded with some grant dollars to use to have the RPA do that. You know, our philosophy here in the business community is the business community has to partner with the university, you know, and a university to grow has to partner with the business community. And
Absolutely.
and that's been your role. And I'll
Absolutely.
tell you, there has been nobody better in that role that I've seen nationwide over the last 20 years than you, because as the university goes, business goes, and as the business goes, the university,
Absolutely.
you know, the university goes.
Yep. I've always felt that it was for us to grow in the university R&D, that we need to be closer to industry. And I think the university administration, the presidents have always said that's what we need to do. The state requires us to be more involved in economic development. That's the reason that the university created this position of Vice President for Economic Development. And because of the critical nature of that partnership. I should add, for example, you mentioned the MBA program. We have a great business school. And a lot of companies now, a lot of technology companies work with our business school to essentially develop marketing, looking at marketing studies for the companies, their competition, etc. And that has worked extremely well. I hear some very, very good things from that also. So I'm glad the HIA is also doing that.
Yeah, we enjoyed it, and I'll tell you, I was at a CEO dinner, and Manny London, the dean of the business school, was there to talk about the resources that the university, particularly the College of Business, offers to businesses. And it was eye-opening for a bunch of the business folks that were there. They hadn't never really thought about partnering with the university and working that way, and they had no idea of the resources that are available at the university and the things you're doing. So let's talk about the economic impact of Stony Brook University in the community and in the region. You know, it's a massive economic driver here. So talk a little bit about that, and talk a little bit about the growth that's happened in your tenure there as to how the ecosystem has tremendously grown.
The impact of, in fact, we're just going through that and the draft report that I have seen essentially estimates that the impact that Stony Brook has, economic impact on Long Island, is between $6 and $6.5 billion a year, and we have the employment impact on Long Island as a result of Stony Brook is, I believe it's about 45,000 employees.
Wow.
That's some direct and some indirect.
Yep.
Okay, which is a very large number.
I think it's the largest single-site employer on Long Island.
Yes,
Right.
I believe so.
Yep,
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Yep. And so with that, let me just give you something. Yeah, employees, and we have, it's incredible that at Stony Brook, I guess the total employment is probably around, direct employment is about 15,000 maybe, between the university and the hospital and so on. But the actual impact is 45,000 employees are essentially as a result of it. Economic impact of the vice presidential area, the economic development area, in terms of our projects, our programs that we work with companies. We just did that for last year, and I'll give you the numbers. We worked on 330 different projects with industry. We worked with 295 companies, and the economic impact was $234 million that came to the companies, whether it was additional grants to the companies or investments in the companies or additional revenue. 234, that's $250 million in economic impact created by the economic development activities of the university.
Yeah, and it's, this last round of students who did the research project for the Hauppauge Industrial Park, they did what made Silicon Valley grow and what made Stanford grow, and it was, one couldn't have grown without the without the other, and the
Yes.
And the partnership, and
Absolutely.
certainly the Long Island community and Long Island businesses as a whole, couldn't have done it without the
That's correct.
couldn't have done it without the university. Just getting back to the point of keeping students here, right? Because it's really from the business owners that I speak to, especially the larger
Mm-hmm.
companies, it's students today want to all go work for Google, want to all go work for for Facebook, and now with CA leaving and not having a primary presence here, are there strategies, are there ways that the businesses here on Long Island can partner better, can market better, can really let their companies be known to the students better?
Over the years, I have found that one of the best tools of recruitment for companies here on the island is to essentially hire interns because during the summer, and because then you're in effect giving the student some new things to do that can improve their opportunities for the job market later. But you also see how they work, see their ability, evaluate their abilities, look at their work ethic. It's very important.
Yep.
You evaluate them over a period of 3 months. And invariably, I've found that when students work on projects with the companies essentially recruit them afterwards. Because the students also then get to know what the company is like, what the work is like, what the people are like. And it's a win-win for both the companies and the students. And it gives the students some money, essentially, to support their education, too.
Yep. And folks, for those of you who don't know what a day in the life of Dr. Yacov Shamash is like, I can tell you, having witnessed him over these years, his Rolodex is probably the most prized and cherished Rolodex here on Long Island. The man has an incredible work ethic, an incredible and uncanny way to really network people together. I mean, one of the things I've been most impressed with you personally is I can just be talking to you about a subject or an issue, and you'll immediately rattle off 2 or 3 people, as esoteric of an issue as I can find. You'll immediately rattle off 2 or 3 people that are involved in that and that I should plug into, and learn. And it's always spot on. They're always the right people to be, to be talking to. So where do you see from the, from the Office of Economic Development and your own sort of professional career, where do you see the next few years for Long Island headed? Where do you see your focus at this point?
I think, and by the way, that network and everything else doesn't come by itself. I don't do it myself. It's really all the people that work with me, the people at the university. It's combined effort. Where are we going? I think the focus in terms of the technologies that we're working on here on Long Island, certainly the sectors, the energy sector, the biotech sector, are 2 major areas. Defense is still here. Defense is still active. And there are a lot of companies that are still working in the defense industry, and we shouldn't forget that. We don't have huge companies, we have some. And that is still a very important part of the Long Island scene. I would love to keep more of our students here in terms of employment. And I think we have, like I said, we have a very good career center that works with companies, creates internship opportunities, summer opportunities, So I welcome those companies to come to us.
That's great. Folks, we want to thank you for joining us today. Doctor, I have to tell you, looking over the last 20 years, you're one of the top people who have helped Long Island drive to the point that it is. We're very, very grateful for all that you've done. And keep up the good work. We really need you sharp and focused out there. So keep up the.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When planting a seed, one must take care to place that seed in a nurturing,
which
supportive
commercial?
environment. To grow and flourish, the seed must be given proper nourishment in a favorable setting to help it reach its full potential. And because growing conditions change, mature plants may also need sustenance. Here at Stony Brook University's Division of Economic Development, we work with new companies throughout the startup stage, turning a technology into a product, developing a business model, identifying sources of financing, building and educating a team, and getting to the market. Mature companies, equally committed to product innovation and imbued with entrepreneurial spirit, have more diverse needs, including advanced technology assistance, failure analysis and defect reduction, continuous improvement for both the manufacturing line and the back office, and specialized credentialing for the business process. A SUNY research flagship, Stony Brook University's Division of Economic Development helps companies sustain business leadership through access to its Cradle of Fortune 500 suite of economic development programs, its billion-dollar plant of specialized labs and facilities, and the intellectual horsepower and creativity of its superbly talented faculty and students. In fact, we've helped over 450 industry partners obtain close to $1 billion in financing and revenues, and created or retained over 19,000 jobs through over 3,500 projects. Find out what hundreds of companies have already discovered. Stony Brook University is the place to help your business grow. Come grow with us. The Division of Economic Development at Stony Brook University.
Welcome back, everyone, to CMM Live. My name is Joe Campolo. I serve as the managing partner of Campolo, Middleton, and McCormick. It's Thursday, December 14th. And in our previous segment, we were privileged to have Dr. Yacov Shamash, who, I characterized correctly in my mind as, really one of the most important figures that Long Island's had over the last 20 years for its economic growth. In our second segment today, we're lucky and proud to have somebody else that I would say the same exact thing about. He's really one of the top people who have fostered and helped create the Long Island economy over the last 20 years. And it's Mitch Pally, who's a MTA board member, the CEO of LIBI, and a good friend. So Mitch, welcome.
My pleasure.
We're so happy to have you here.
My pleasure.
Really. So just so our audience understands our relationship, going back to my Stony Brook days, I met Mitch as one of my professors there. He did our state and local government class, and no nonsense, no anything. You were really impressive in terms of how you were able to simplify very complicated bureaucratic processes to the point where they were very understandable. And then having known you now for the past 20 plus years, I think that's really a huge value and asset that you're able to bring to the to the Long Island community. The many different hats that you've
Right.
the many different hats that you've worn. Currently, the CEO of LIBI, you've been there for
7 years.
7 years. I was going to
7
say
years.
6 years, but it's 7 years.
7 years.
So talk about that. Libby seems to be doing great. We're members, we're sponsors. You
Yeah.
guys are doing fantastic work. Talk about how that's been.
Well, the home building industry on Long Island is very strong, but it's very different than the way it used to be. It used to be basically we would build single family homes and that was it. And unfortunately, to do that, you need land on which to do that. A lot of that land is no longer available, has already been developed. And so what we're building now are different types of homes, multifamily, transit-oriented development in downtowns near the train stations, assisted living, over 55 townhouses and condominiums. So the market has changed. That has resulted in a lot of work for a lot of different people. And that's resulted in Libby being very, very strong at the moment because our members are working.
Right, and it's so we had a real estate panel. You were on our panel a couple weeks ago. I thought that was a
Right.
great discussion. We got great feedback from it. But some of the folks, left there and grumbled a little bit like, well, this is the same stuff we've been talking about for the last 20 years.
Right.
And in my mind, the only answer to that was, well, in the past we were talking about it, and now we're doing it.
Oh,
Right.
there's no question that the market has changed and a lot of the development has already occurred and is occurring at different places. I kidded, during the presentation. I used to be upset because Patchogue was the only example. Now Patchogue is one of many examples in which a downtown area has been reinvigorated by residential and commercial development in the downtown area, especially residential development, because the business community in the downtown area survives on people who live there. Not people who are going to visit there, but people who live there. And you can see that in Mineola, you can see that in Westbury, you can see it in Farmingdale, you can see it in Patchogue, you can see it now in Port Jefferson. There are Valley Stream. There are many places around the island where this type of new development has occurred. It's bringing in a new demographic to Long Island, and it's really been a focal point of how Long Island has changed from a residential development standpoint over the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I agree, Patchogue, everybody's talking about Patchogue, but I have to tell you, and I want to get your view on this. Patchogue was in terrible shape
Yep.
before they found a friendly government that were going to incentivize and open
Right.
up the doors for private developers to get in here.
And a sewage treatment plant.
And sewers. So
If you
we're
don't
going to
have-
talk
if
about
you don't
the
have
keys
both,
to the kingdom. Exactly
You're
right.
not
It's
going,
sewers.
You're not going anywhere.
And so, one of the things that I think about, and I write a blog called Off the Record, and last week I wrote about the fact that white investment dollars have to be investing in poorer communities at this point. Look, it alleviates a lot of the tax burden. It solves a lot of the
Yep.
the problems. And so we looked at Patchogue, and that really to me is a national model.
Right.
Okay, that Patchogue was hurting for a long time, and it could have really went down a bad path if that hadn't have been
Correct.
revitalized. And I just wonder why there's so much resistance or reluctance to be doing that in the other poorer communities
Well, I
that
think
we have.
I don't think there's a reluctance. A perfect example where it is happening is Wyandanch, where there's a very, very big redevelopment project, half of which is already built, in which all the units are already occupied from a residential standpoint, right by the train station. And MTA, of which obviously I'm a member, helped in that regard. We built a brand new parking garage for the area so that the at-grade parking could be redeveloped into something obviously much more important to the community. So I think it's more a question of leadership than it is unwillingness to do so. The people in the community, both the elected officials who represent the community and the non-elected officials, the community itself really has to want it and has to make it easy for a developer to do it by rezoning the land for multifamily already, for putting together the consolidation of plots, which is not the easiest thing to do in a downtown area. With that kind of leadership in those type of places, I think you'll see even more of it happening in some of the different areas on the island.
Yeah, and it's a national movement that needs to start, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing, Puerto Rico being devastated by the hurricane, and they're lobbying for a $95 billion infrastructure bill, which they need. They
Right.
were completely devastated, right? But here we have, a president who understands real estate development. And so I'm looking at Long Island and saying, this is what we should be doing in Chicago.
Right.
This is what we should be doing in Atlanta. Federal government should be subsidizing developers.
The hardest part as we were kidding before, you need leadership, you need the community buy-in, and you need sewers, okay? Because we all understand most of Suffolk County, including many of the downtown areas, are not sewered.
Yep.
And that significantly restricts the ability to build multifamily housing. In Wyandanch, they had to run a brand new sewer line from the Southwest Sewer District into Wyandanch at a cost of $25 million. The county paid for that, not just the local community, because the county understood the benefit of rejuvenating that area. That, more than anything, holds back redevelopment in some of the areas because they don't have sewers. And until they have sewers, it's going to be a very difficult environment.
Right, and part of LIBI's job, and certainly part of the business community and developers' job, is to be pressuring these elected officials
Right.
to get these dollars in so sewers can be,
Right.
can be run. I mean,
It's not a big issue in Nassau County because most of Nassau County is sewered, but in Suffolk County it is a very big issue. I mean, I kid people all the time. MacArthur Airport is on septic systems. They don't have a sewer system. People look at me like I'm crazy. I said, no, that is correct. And that restricts the ability to redevelop a lot of the area around MacArthur Airport, where you could put residential and commercial, and much bigger residential, and much bigger commercial, and different types of commercial, like the food industry and the drug industry, which is very big on Long Island. You can't put them there because you don't have sewers.
so what was it? Just poor planning, or we didn't realize the growth that was going to be here?
I think it was a combination of both. I think it was we didn't realize the combination of growth, and then when we had the opportunity with the development of the Southwest Sewer District, the corruption and everything that resulted from that stopped sewer construction in Suffolk County for basically 50 years. Now we're trying to catch up. The difficulty now is it's much more expensive to do it than it was before, and all the federal dollars that were available in the 60s and 70s for sewer development have dried up.
Yep.
And so the community now has to do it on its own with the state helping, but the cost of sewer construction at the moment is very difficult and very expensive, and that makes it very difficult to do in a large area.
Yeah, it's amazing how real estate transactions have changed over the last 20 years. Because the first question is, what's the sewer situation?
That's correct.
It's first question. And,
Right.
And that's been this evolution that's
Right.
that's come out, and it's like a chess game now.
What do I need from the health department?
Exactly right.
And if you don't need the right thing, you got no chance.
They've been empowered. Let's switch a little bit to to transportation. I wrote about this. I blogged about it a little bit. I'm a part of a group called the Energia program here on Long Island, and it's business leaders. And we spent a day in Jamaica with the folks from the Long Island Railroad,
Right.
To talk about and see all the sort of transportation upgrades that are being done. And I was enlightened by it. I left excited because it's like a thing on Long Island to just complain about traffic, complain
Of
about
course.
the trains, and complain about all that. But talk about some of the exciting programs and projects going on, because folks just really don't realize what's going on.
Over the next 5 years, and in a development standpoint, as you know, 5 years is like tomorrow.
Yes.
But in the next 5 years, Long Island will get the benefit of about $15 billion in transportation improvements. Starting with Second Track, which is under construction as we speak, from Farmingdale to Ronkonkoma, which will be able to open up that area for half-hour service off-peak. Third Track, which just got approved yesterday at MTA, which will build a third track on the main line from Hicksville to past New Hyde Park. That will allow us to run 40% more trains in the peak hour. Jamaica, with a reconfiguration of the entire signal system there to allow through trains, without having to stop, and East Side Access, which is probably close to $11 billion on its own, which used to be a big hole 150 feet under Grand Central Terminal, and is now very soon going to be a beautiful new Long Island Railroad station. When all of those are done, Long Islanders will have the ability to get a one-seat ride to either Penn or Grand Central, either of the terminals, and the Long Island Railroad will be able to run 40% more trains on the main line and other areas. We're also adding about 200 new rail cars to that situation. So we're hopeful when we do all of this that it will be a brand new renaissance for the Long Island Railroad in about 5 years.
Great. So I want to ask you a question. So I was listening to a podcast, and there was a professor who just published a book called Complacency. I don't remember his name, and his point was, you know, if you look at China and you look at the United States over the last 20 years, the quality of life with regard to transportation here in the United States has not improved. It's actually either stayed the same. And he's talking about how long flights take, how long train rides take, scheduling, versus China, who's increased their efficiencies in terms of transportation by 200% over the same time. What are the challenges, though, right? So what are the challenges?
The challenges are twofold. Number one is financing. You know, these things don't happen without money, without lots of money. They are very expensive to do.
Yep.
You know, $15 billion, we just don't pick it up somewhere. The state of New York invests a significant amount of that. Federal government has a significant part of East Side Access. The second thing you need is community buy-in. The community in which you're building these has to understand the importance of the project, not just to their local community, but to the region as a whole. That's one of the reasons why Third Track has been held in abeyance for the last 40 years, because the willingness of the local community to accept it was not there. That should have been done 40 years ago. It's now being done now, but what happened is, of course, we didn't have the benefit of using it for the last 40 years, and the cost of building it is now much more expensive than it was before. Those two things, plus the leadership of elected officials who are willing to say, this is important to the local community and to the region and to the state, is essential. We now have, to some degree, all of those boxes checked, and that's one of the reasons why projects like these and many others, bringing, you know, Metro North into Penn Station from the north is moving forward. The Gateway Tunnel from New Jersey to New York City is moving forward. There's a brand new, as you know, Tappan Zee Bridge is basically almost finished. These are the type of projects that in the past were done automatically. Now they're finally beginning to take shape over the last couple of years, and I think they will see a significant improvement. We're never going to be able to build our way out of the transportation problem on Long Island by building highways. We don't have the land, and people don't want that. But what we can do is significantly improve our mass transit system, either bus or by rail, and that hopefully will help the system.
Yeah, other things that I love are the getting rid of the toll booths at the bridges and tunnels,
Right.
and really
Yeah.
just, so it's like, to me, and this is what I meant before about your ability to crystallize things, right? Is people, I think, are very uneducated as to the need for infrastructure spending and continued reinvestment in the country. I think before World War II, we were either the number 6 or number 7 economy in the world. Post World War II, because of all the industrial expansion and all the military spend, we became the number 1 economy in the world. And to sustain that growth, it takes infrastructure spending. But yet it doesn't dominate the headlines at all.
Well, it did in the 50s and 60s when we were building the interstate system, okay? That got a lot of play, it got a lot of money at that time, and that became the focal point of the national movement for transportation infrastructure. Then we've lost that. We're finally, I think, starting to get it back. People are beginning to realize transportation infrastructure means not only transportation benefits, it means economic development benefits, it means construction jobs, it means a lot of different facets of the community will be improved. We just have to see how that's going to play its way out. Hopefully, Washington will do a bill, a big transportation infrastructure bill soon. Until then, I can tell you the state of New York is not going to wait, and the MTA is not going to wait. We have lots of projects to move forward, and we're going to move them all forward.
Yeah, and that's great news, and that's really, really great news for for Long Island. Let's talk about like vehicle traffic, right? So that's another piece of it. And part of this program I went through with the LIRR, they had folks from Uber and Lyft there that were talking about pilot programs where they would partner with transit authorities and railroads
Right.
to alleviate parking and the need for a second car and everything else like that. Where do you see that? Because you drive past Ronkonkoma, and I want to talk about the Ronkonkoma Hub. You drive past Ronkonkoma, and the parking it's like you're at a Jets game or a Giants game. It's immense.
If you get to Ronkonkoma after 7 o'clock in the morning, you can't find a parking space, okay?
Yeah.
The good thing is people are taking the train. The bad thing is people are driving to take the train.
Correct.
And so that's one of the purposes of transit-oriented development, is to have people live near the station so they don't have to drive to the station to get on the train. That's the benefit of all the transit-oriented development that has occurred on Long Island. That's one of the benefits of the Ronkonkoma Hub project, is to have people live near the station who don't have to do that. But Uber and Lyft can play a very, very important role in allowing people to get to the train station, because not everybody's going to live there. People live, like me, I live 5 miles from the nearest train station. I got to get to the train. I take my car. At some point, on a coordinated fashion, Uber and Lyft could be very, very helpful to allow that to happen and alleviate some of the need for additional parking spaces, without a doubt.
What about transit in the form of bus, though? Why is the bus system never really taken off on Long Island?
Well, because the bus system has always been a second-class citizen in two ways. Number one, most people on Long Island have alternate means of transportation which they'd rather use. And if a bus is going to be caught in traffic, they'd rather be in their car caught in traffic than in a bus caught in traffic. So therefore, what has happened is the only people who take the bus are people who have to take the bus because they have no alternate means of transportation. The second issue is we don't have the density on Long Island. Bus transportation needs density. You can't stop every quarter of a mile and pick one person up. You got to pick up 20 people or 40 people. And we don't have the situation on Long Island where lots of people go from one place to another place. And that hurts, and that makes the cost of the system much more expensive because you don't have the ridership necessary to help from a density standpoint. So it's a very difficult situation. Obviously, the Nassau and Suffolk bus systems do as best they can. Nassau has it a little easier because their situation is much more concentrated. In Suffolk, many of the routes are very long, very expensive, and have very low ridership because people can figure out a different way to get there.
Right. So the Ronkonkoma Hub, right? This is one of those things where it's been talked about a long time. I saw some shovels go in the.
It is now under construction.
In the ground.
Yes.
So talk about the project and what the anticipated impact is going to be for.
Well, the Ronkonkoma Hub is a multi-phased project around the station, going to the east and the other side of the train is on the north side of Ronkonkoma, of the Ronkonkoma station itself. It's a project of Tritech development, the town of Brookhaven and Suffolk County. One of the issues they had to face was the sewer issue because there are no sewers there. So they had to figure out what to do with the waste. They finally figured out how to do that from a sewer connection standpoint. That took a while. But it will mean about 1,500 residential units, retail, commercial, office space in the area around the station. It will revigorate that entire area. Plus, it will provide people the opportunity to live by the station, to be able to walk to the station for those people who may still want to work in New York City or may want to work in any of the other areas along the main line on Long Island. They'll now be able to do that easily from a rail perspective without having to take a car. So it's a win-win for everybody. It's taken a while to get to the finish line. We finally got to the finish line, and it's now under construction.
Yeah, it's interesting because Jim Coughlin from TriTech and I were talking about their project in Port Jeff,
Right.
which is a wonderful project, right?
Yep.
These wonderful, they took a piece of land and they're making these wonderful apartments in there. And he said he was surprised because you hear all this millennial. He was surprised at how many folks were committing to an apartment and were going to sell their homes in Oldfield and other areas,
Yep.
because they just wanted to, to downsize. And the question I have for Ronkonkoma is, what do they really expect the anticipated,
Well, I think
resident to be there?
I think Ronkonkoma is a little different than Port Jeff. Ronkonkoma is right by the station.
Yep.
Port Jeff is not. Port Jeff is in Upper Port Jeff by the water, and I think it has a different clientele. I would assume they'll get a mix. They'll get millennials. They'll get people just graduating from the universities who are working on Long Island, but they'll also get a large number of people who have bought a house on Long Island many years ago, whose families have now gone, who want to stay on Long Island, but no longer want to shovel the snow or get rid of the garbage or all these things that are important for home ownership. And you're going to see a lot of those people buy into Ronkonkoma without a doubt. That has been the focal point of what has happened around the area, because they want to stay on Long Island. They want to also be able to get on the train and go to New York City, which is obviously is very attractive from an entertainment and maybe from a job perspective, but they don't want the intricacies of home ownership at that age. And so I think you're going to see a combination of both.
Yeah, so it takes municipal support, right? And so Patchogue, Paul Pontieri was such a good partner. The town of Brookhaven over the years has had mixed reviews in terms of how it's partnered with, with developers. But I mean, what's the real opposition? What I hear folks say, community groups say, whenever I'm working with developers, we don't want to look like Queens.
Right.
We don't want to look like Queens. And I said, what are the options? What is it? What are the options?
It's. I have this conversation with the planning people all the time. You can make 1 unit per acre look terrible and 100 look beautiful. It's all about design. What's the acreage you have? How can you design it in a way to be beneficial to the local community? It's only that one little area. And as I look at it, from those people who are living in single-family home communities and may feel that as a threat, it's not a threat, it's a compliment, because almost all the homes on Long Island, single-family homes, are sold to people who already live in the metropolitan area.
Right.
So if they're not renting on Long Island to begin with, they're not going to be able to buy my house when I'm ready to sell, whenever that may be, because the market will be significantly restricted. The more people who want to buy my house, the higher the price. So that's why I say to the single-family home communities, this is going to complement your area. It's being mainly done in the downtown areas, which are already developed from a downtown urban, suburban perspective, as I say. And I think it's a very good win for those communities. And those communities that have done it have found it to be very beneficial. And those communities that have not have been left behind. Hicksville being a perfect example of that. And now Hicksville has decided, you know what, we got to get into the 21st century.
Yeah, to me it just seems like a very practical
Right.
statement. Either, you do this, or I have to raise your taxes.
That's
your,
right.
Your choice, your choice. So folks, I got to wrap up, Mitch. It was great having you here. I have to tell you, I'm so happy and proud to have known you over the years. I think you do a terrific job for
Thank you
Long
very
Island,
much.
and you're somebody we're very, very proud to have.
Thank you
so
very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.